Welcome to another episode of the Boxing Lockdown, powered by SA Boxing Talk. I'm with the two gentlemen, Hayden and Cyril. Good evening, gentlemen. Tonight we're going to be talking about Saul Canelo Alvarez. Pound for pound, number one. Some opinions, some think he's number two. Some people think he's number three. And where he fits in as an all-time fighter and potentially great in the middleweight division. So I say middleweight, but Hayden, let me start with you. He's campaigned as a junior middle. He started probably even as a junior welterweight early in his career, but won titles as junior middleweight, super middleweight, and light heavy. Coming off an explosive win against Sergey Kovalev, a bit of a lackluster performance against Danny Jacobs. Let me ask you, Hayden, what is Canelo's best weight?
I think myself and a lot of people at home would agree that probably it's middleweights. It's on the cusp of how much he can cut weight and where he looks sort of the most poppiest and lightest on his feet, where he can still generate enough power to really harm someone. We saw two performances, one being at super middleweight against a guy from Liverpool, and the other one at light heavyweight against Sergey Kovalev. Both of those performances, one was against an easier opponent. I keep, what is the guy's name? You would know it.
Rocky Fieldings.
And the other one against Kovalev, where he looked a little bit too heavy, a little bit too flat-footed, and probably was on his way to losing that fight before he caught Kovalev with some good shots. In saying that, I think his best performances are most definitely come at middleweight.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think he was on his way to lose against Kovalev because I think that outcome was always going to be there. Having said that, it's not where you start, it's where you end. Cyril, let me ask you, I kind of agree with Hayden about the middleweight division. The issue that I think he has is that I don't think he's going to be making 160 too easily these days. Do you agree?
Yeah, I don't see middleweight as his best weight. I think super middle would probably suit him a lot better. Unfortunately for him, where the big fights, the big money fights, I don't know if they are at super middle. They might be more either middle or at light heavy. So, but definitely, I think super middle is his best weight.
I'm gonna disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. There are big fights at super middle. There's Callum Smith. There's Billy Joe, which was obviously that was going to happen obviously before COVID-19. And then a light heavy, there's Arthur Beterbiev. At middleweight, there's a third trilogy with Triple G. So there's some really big, juicy, exciting fights. Hayden, let me ask you, middleweight, the two fights with Golovkin, I thought they were cracking fights. That's a sellable fight. That's a fan-friendly fight where both guys all get stuck into each other again. Do you think there's a possibility that the fight will happen for a third time at middleweight?
Yeah, you could see it actually being at super middleweight because he might have to move up, and Golovkin's he's big enough to move up anyway. And the fact that Golovkin's been struggling to make middleweight for a very long time might suggest that it's let's meet at that weight. And I do see the third fight happening purely based on the fact that it's going to generate a lot of revenue, a lot of interest, and boxing needs another super fight. And of course, we've all had our debates of who won the first fight, who won the second fight. So I think it's automatically a third fight is sort of the decider. In saying that, I do want to see the Billy Joe Saunders fight. I do believe that's at the next mega fight.
We talk about, Cyril, we talk about fights being marinated where, two fighters are being kept apart. It's simmering, it's marinating, and then all of a sudden it happens, and it turns out to be, oh man, why did we even bother with that? And case in point, Pacquiao Mayweather. But let's talk about Canelo fighting Billy Joe. How do you see that fight going if it happens and when it happens?
I think Billy Joe is a clever fighter, and he'll give Canelo more problems than people give him credit for. But I still see Canelo pulling through and winning a points decision. It's a good fight. It's a good fight. It's one I'd love to see, but I think Canelo wins that.
Hayden, you can see Canelo likes guys standing in the pocket and trading with him. Billy Joe is not that kind of fighter. We've seen Canelo have problems with guys who move. Mayweather, Danny Jacobs, the kid from Cuba, Lara, giving massive problems just with the movement and stuff. Do you think that that's just the kind of style that Canelo has? problems with, or do you think he can adapt against a guy like Saunders, who we know is not going to stand in the pocket and trade with him?
Yeah, it's interestingly a very technical fight. It's going to end up, and it's not just going to be Canelo being brute force. I think we're going to see a lot of what we see in his training camps, where Canelo was working highly on his defense. I think the Mayweather fight was a big wake up for him. I mean, I watched that fight again not too long ago, and he's sort of like he was all over the place. And I think since that performance, since he's obviously gone up in weight, his movement has been a lot better. He's looked a lot sharper. And Billy Joe is very, very sharp, very, very tactical, has great ring generalship. So I think it's a very close fight. And this might be a little bit controversial, but I think because Canelo is A-team and he's been A-team in a lot of his fights, the judges tend to go in his direction.
The fact that he fought Mayweather at 152, which was catch weight, obviously not junior 154, and the fact that Canelo was really green when that fight happened, do you think? And it just goes to show that when a fighter loses early in his career, it's not a train smash. But that fight, to a degree, actually made Canelo a better fighter. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. He became, I think he learned a lot from that one loss than probably from any fight in his career, and he kind of learned he wasn't invincible. So and if you look at him since that loss, he's just gone into another level. He's just been amazing, brilliant. So yeah,
let's talk about Callum Smith, because obviously he's the linear champion at super middle with a ring belt, and a lot of people feel that he will stylistically also give Canelo a very hard fight. Hayden, how do you see that fight going?
Although I do agree with you in that comment where I think it'll be stylistically another difficult fight, another technical fight. It's two guys. I mean, Canelo's maybe not as big as Callum Smith is in terms of reach and height, but I think Canelo deals with him a little bit better than he does with Saunders, purely based on, and I'm going to say this with Saunders, styles and the Irislandi Lara effect with the southpaw. I'm not saying that Canelo can't fight southpaws. I'm just saying that a technical southpaw is difficult for him as opposed to a technical orthodox. I think that he's dealt with technical orthodoxes in the past, and guys like Daniel Jacobs, although can punch, Canelo saw him off technically.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if you look at Callum Smith, when he fought George Groves, kind of a little bit of an upset, considering, that Callum is a little bit of an upright fighter, and he kind of boxes an upright fighter, very rarely kind of dips down and goes low, where Saunders is a different kettle of fish altogether. He's got that nice southpaw rhythmic flow to him, and I think that's going to give Canelo a lot more problems than a Callum Smith. But let's turn our attention now to the light heavyweight division for Canelo, Cyril, because he knocked Kovalev out. But how does Canelo go against a guy like Artur Beterbiev? I'm thinking Beterbiev might be the most dangerous fight for him out there because of his power and the fact that Beterbiev's just a beast. What's your opinion if that fight ever had to happen?
I think Beterbiev is as a beast and is a danger to anyone that thinks of him stepping into a boxing ring with him. He's amazing. He's got incredible power. Even with Canelo's granite chin, he beats Canelo, I believe.
Let's do a quick vote. So I'm going with Beterbiev beating Canelo. Hey, Cyril, you agree? Hayden, who do you go with in that fight if it happens?
Yeah, I think size matters with regards to Beterbiev just being an absolutely Beterbiev, tenacious.
Yeah, you kind of get the feel that Golden Boy did a really good job in choosing Kovalev for that fight because they knew he was on the slide. But a guy like Beterbiev, who's really starting to clean up everyone who's put in front of him. I mean, the guy's just a beast from amateurs all the way through to pros. I mean, he's got to be. It's interesting. He's not one of the guys. He's one of the guys right now who should actually be on the cusp of becoming a superstar. Hayden, would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. He should be. Another interesting one is obviously Dimitri Bivol in that division as well. But you're right, Beterbiev is on the verge of stardom. However, the one thing that's against him is age. That's what I would say.
Correct. Yeah, 100%. 100%. So here's the next thing, Cyril. If you were Golden Boy and there was a lot of money on the table, would you make the Beterbiev Canelo fight?
No. I think if you're Golden Boy, the smart thing, if you really want to fight a light heavyweight champion, you fight Bivol. Bivol has already said he'd be willing to drop down to super middle for Canelo. So You ask him, you make him drop to super middle and fight there.
Let's say Canelo gets through Billy Joe, which is not an easy fight. Who would you like to see him fight next, Hayden, and in which division? And against who?
Look, obviously the big ones are Callum Smith and Gennady Golovkin, but I think a guy just outside of that's also another technical fight, another flashy boxer is Caleb Plant. I think that's another good fight for Canelo Alvarez. Maybe not the bigger name that Alvarez is looking for, but if you're looking at to put on a display for the fans, you've got to be looking at someone like Plant. I think he's a very stylish boxer.
What about Demetrius Andrade? Unbeaten champion, not spoken about a lot, kind of boring. Cyril, also very technical, former world amateur champion. Hasn't made a lot of noise because he's not that flamboyant, charismatic kind of fighter, but he's done really well. How does he do against Canelo? Who's been, incidentally, if you read a lot of Andrade's reports, he wants the Canelo fight.
Yeah, I've been wondering, what does Andrade have to do to get a big fight? I feel he deserves it. Sure, he's not the most entertaining fighter out there, but he gets the job done. So that's a fight I wouldn't mind seeing. I would like to see that. And yeah, I think Canelo probably wins it, but it's not an easy fight. He's not gonna just walk through him.
Hayden, would you agree that Andrade and Billy Joe are kind of maybe on the same kind of level in terms of skill and styles and so forth?
Definitely. Demetrius Andrade is sort of the unspoken about guy in and around that division, and it's difficult because no one wants to fight him, and he's got that. How like Golovkin struggled to get fights for years and years and years because someone saw this Terminator and then didn't want to take him on, and then eventually got to the point where he got all the belts, so he became relevant. I think Andrade can't get there because again, all the other guys have got the belts, and how's Andrade going to get there? He's got a promoter who can get in places, but unfortunately, he's still not getting the fights. I mean, him against Billy Joe Saunders is another one that was supposed to be made and never got made.
So let me ask you this: pound for pound, do you consider Canelo number one, Hayden?
I don't.
Okay. And why?
I consider Canelo Alvarez number 2 or 3, depending, because I have Terence Crawford at number 1. I just because of just the way he's been rampaging, and I've explained.
And Lomachenko number 2, correct?
Yeah, between Loma and Canelo for number 2, it's a difficult one to say. Yeah.
Right, Cyril, your pick. Do you think Canelo is number 1 pound for pound?
No, I think the number 1 spot is between Terence Crawford, Alexander Usyk, and Lomachenko. Between those 3, I would give Canelo the 4th spot, but those 3 battle it out for the top 3 places.
Right, and let me ask you, how does Canelo do in a different era? Hayden, let me start with you.
I feel like he's still competitive, particularly in the middleweight division. When he was campaigning as the reigning champion around this era, and it's going to sound a bit unfortunate, but sort of around the time that he beat Gennady Golovkin the second time, I think the first performance was a little bit of a shell shock for him. After that, he's been rampaging like against big names. Be it that when you're looking historically, I don't think he perhaps does as well, but I still think he can become a world champion in other eras.
So your opinion, we can talk about him versus Hagler. We can talk about him against Carlos Monzon. We can talk about him against Ray Leonard to a point as well. Duran at middleweight as well. So how would you rate him in a different era?
I think Duran wasn't. Middleweight wasn't Duran's best weight, so maybe he might have had a chance there. Leonard would have still been too smart for him, I think. And don't forget another middleweight who was an absolute star in the 90s, Roy Jones Jr. I don't think he beats Roy Jones.
We all must have forgot.
Yeah, he must have forgot.
Roy Jones was special. And also, if you consider the fact that he moved up to super middle and light heavy, my opinion is that Canelo doesn't come close. I still think that Jones was one of the all-time greats. I mean, the guy, what he did was just remarkable in his prime. I mean, obviously, he went on way past his prime. But Canelo, especially with a guy who could move like Roy Jones Jr., he would have given him nightmares. Gentlemen, I think we're going to leave it at Canelo for tonight. Thanks for tuning in to the Boxing Lockdown. Hayden, your last parting shot for the show.
I think everyone at home should be safe, and we're in level 4 right now, and hopefully it starts accelerating and we start getting on with real life.
Cyril, your last parting shot.
Let's stay safe. Stay safe and let's beat this COVID so we can start seeing boxing again.
Guys, a bit of a curveball. I'm going to throw one last question to you. Bernard Hopkins, middleweight champion for many, many years. How does Bernard Hopkins do against Canelo in their primes? Hayden, go for it.
Oh, me first. Right. In their
my opinion, Hopkins just is too smart, too clever, too cute, knows all the tricks in the book, and he out-hustles him, outwits him, and outboxes him. Hayden, your opinion.
No, most definitely. I think he's got all the tricks. I don't think Canelo Alvarez has the tricks that Bernard Hopkins has up his sleeve, I don't think he's had to... I don't know if he's not learned them, but I don't think he's had to go there. And Bernard Hopkins is far too crafty for him.
And Cyril, let's be honest, Bernard Hopkins is now his promoter, so it's a good thing that none of us work for Golden Boy. Do you agree with me that Hopkins would have beaten him? Would have been too smart and too cute?
Yeah, I think we would have beaten him by quite a lot, actually. On points, of course, but I don't think it would be a close fight. I think Bernard Hopkins had a way of just too crafty, too smart for most fighters. So yeah.
And you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to know. Okay, I'll ask you a question so you can have a bit of input as well. Do you think Canelo will finish his career as 1, 2, or 3 top Mexican boxers of all time?
It's a very interesting question because most people regard Chavez as the all-time great. Obviously, the connection is that Chavez Jr. fought Canelo, so there's that connection, which is obviously connected to Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. Well, in terms of popularity, you would have to put him in the top 3 or top 4, top 5 of all time. And I don't know what the end of his career is going to look like. I think we can only gauge that once his career's over. As it stands now, Chavez Sr. has to be the greatest Mexican fighter for me, in my opinion, of all time. And how we judge greatness overall is when we look at the fighter's career once he's retired from the sport. But it's a very interesting question. And talking about Bernard Hopkins, I think we're going to execute the show. Thanks for watching. To all of you who tuned in, catch us again soon. This has been the Boxing Lockdown powered by SA Boxing Talk. We will catch you again soon.